You know that we are at the moment on a GADA trend, meaning that everybody wants to have their GADA watches, independent brands and to a lesser extent mainstream brands. And here I have with me what I consider to be one of the best GADA watches from a main brand out of Japan. And this one is so good that it can even be considered a spiritual successor of the Sharp 033. Wanna know what it is? Let's find out right away. And without extending the mystery, this watch is the not that well known Citizen NB1050, and this is the 59H version, so this charcoal dial version. Let me tell you why I believe this watch is really good for the quite small amount of money they are asking for. Just to clear that out of the way, where I checked online, they're asking for a little bit under $300, and that is really good for what this watch is proposing. In this video, we are going to be checking why I believe this watch is really a contender. We are of course going to be comparing it to the main contenders, even from smaller brands such as the Erebus Ascent or maybe even the Martin SN0118, watches that I have talked extensively about in this channel. And then we're going to be seeing, of course, the positives and negatives of this watch. But before that, just to let you know, this is a JDM model, meaning that you cannot buy it outside of Japan. Sadly, the Japanese usually reserve the best things for themselves. That is true for some cars. That is true, of course, for watches as well. That is really sad, but that is the way it is. And that is why some companies have made their business to buy watches for you out of Japan and then to send them to you. And this is exactly what Zen Market do. They take a very small commission, only 500 yen, which is just over $3, so really not a lot of money. They will calculate the whole fees, like the transport and everything, and they will bill you the whole. You will of course have to factor in import duties depending on each country, so make sure you take that into account. And of course I have left the link for this watch on Zen Market in the description of the video, so go check it out, and thanks to them for sending this watch in. But let's go to the watch itself, and let's start by the dimensions. Being a GADA, it cannot be too big, and it is of course only 38.2 millimeters by a quite thin 10.7 in height, a log-to-log of 46.6, but notice those male end links. So the end link to end link is a pretty large 51.6. The log width is 20 millimeters, and the bracelet tapers from 20 to a little bit under 18 where it meets the clasp. Let's first talk about the dial of the watch, and as you can see, it is a pretty classic dial, but that beautiful iridescent charcoal color is in there. Reminder of the Seiko 5 SNXS79 with the dials being rectangles, but here those rectangles are really faceted quite well, and they do have a small amount of lume at the tip. The indices at 12, 6 and 9 are quadrilaterals, which are also very well faceted and with bigger lume plots. At 3 you've got a framed date window, which does not match with the dial color, but that doesn't really matter as it balances out with the index at 9. The hands are just buttons, but they're faceted, and they have one different kind of finishing on each facet, one being brushed and the other one being polished, which gives you a quite nice effect. There's no actual rehaut, but the case at the peripheries of the dial is mirror polished, giving the impression that the dial is quite larger if you look it at the right angle. At the top of the dial, you've got an applied Citizen in all letters and just a printed automatic at the bottom, and at the very bottom written in very small letters, made in Japan. That is also, the dial is very nice and uncluttered, and of course that sunburst charcoal is something that we very much enjoy about this watch. The case of the watch is surprisingly well made for a Japanese watch at this price point, and that is the beauty of JDM. Look at the different facets between brushing and polishing. You've got brushing on the top, but you've got a quite large polished chamfer and then again another facet, and the sides of the watch are vertically brushed. And then there's another under facet which is polished. So 4 different finishings just for the dial, and that is really, really well made. At the time, the Sarbo 33 had a case that was a little bit more complex, especially on the lugs, but it wasn't as well defined. The transitions between finishings are really well defined. I would say they're almost as good as what Saint Martin or Erebus do, and that is a very good compliment. The bezel is divided in 2. The first angled part being quite large, and a very small lip descends at a 90-degree angle, and it is polished as well. The crown is just push-pull, so no screw down here, although the watch is 100 meters water resistant. It is not signed though, which seems like quite of a missed opportunity. If you flip the watch, you can check the Miura 9011 movement, which is actually exactly the 9015. Just the 9011 denomination is reserved for watches only for Citizen. Something like the 4R35 and NH35 for Seiko movements. The movement is quite well decorated, and that skeletonized rotor is really attractive. On the movement plates, you've got Tokyo stripes. Let's check the movement on the time grapher. And as you can see, the reading for this movement is really good, as these 90 series often are. Almost spot on. The bit error is just a little bit high, but really within tolerances, so I'm really happy with how this watch is faring. Lume wise, we have some quite good lume, not a lot of it. This is a GADA after all, and not a diver. But that is some pretty decent. I ran the test for around 10 minutes, and even at the end you can see that it is still quite visible, both on the markers and hands. The bracelet is an oyster strap held together by pins with the awful pin color system that is a nightmare, but Citizen likes doing that, like Seiko do as well. It may be a little bit more secure, but just for setting it is just hell. You really do not want to lose those small little pieces, but at least everything is solid here, even the end links. The clasp itself, the shell is hollow, but the elements are solid, which is really an upgrade from where Japanese watches used to be only years ago. The bracelet and clasp itself are really better if you compare it to only a Sarbo 33, where nothing was really well defined. At the time we were not as demanding with our finishing, but here everything is spot on, really good for what we are paying. Quality wise, let's be honest, the Erebus Ascent and Saint Martin SN0144 are the better watches, but not by much. So the choice would depend on you. Does brand mean a lot for you? And if it does, this watch really is a credible alternative, especially because it is even a little bit less expensive or on par price-wise with those other high-quality watches. Citizen has covered the whole watch with its Duratect protection, meaning that it is supposed to have some scratch-proofness. Some YouTubers, namely Ben from Ben's Watch Club, have tested it especially on titanium watches and have seen that it is not really that effective. I will let you be the judge of that. You just have to know that Citizen do say that it has an extra layer of protection. Let's really quickly compare it to something like the Erebus Ascent. The Ascent is a little bit more expensive. I think it was $350 or something like that. Let's say pretty much the same price. I would say that holding the watches next to each other, the Ascent has a slightly better finishing and slightly better quality on the dial, on the hands, slightly better quality overall. As does the Saint Martin SN0144. I believe the Erebus and the Saint Martin are neck to neck, quality-wise. But that doesn't mean the Citizen is a poorly made watch. It is actually a really good made watch and a really good effort for such a big brand. So I believe that Citizen, being a huge brand and having high structural costs, the comparison with microbrands is not actually that fair. Of course, the microbrands are going to get destroyed in regards to the bracelet and clasp clasp, of course, which leads me to the positives and negatives of this watch. Positive, you get a lot for your money here, especially with that big name Citizen. You get a beautiful GADA watch, a watch with a beautiful charcoal dial. There's also versions in blue and in white, but I enjoy this one the most. You've got a watch with great sizing, with that 38 and below 11 millimeters in height. You've got that Duratec coating, if that is worth something actually, and you've got that high beat Miyota movement in there. You also have great quality with this watch for a watch under $300 from a big name brand. This is really good. You've got a display case back, something that neither Saint Martin nor Erebus give you on their Ascents or SN0144. And you've got, of course, something I forgot to mention, sapphire crystal. It is almost a given, but it is good to mention it here. And I do believe there is a small amount of anti-reflective coating on that crystal. Next positive point is the fact that this watch is actually Citizen's answer to the GADA phenomenon, and I'm really glad that they undertook it, proposing a product of high quality at really affordable prices that can almost compete neck to neck with the really affordable high quality watches that we have mentioned in the Erebus Ascent and Saint Martin SN0144. Now let's go to the negatives. First of all, those small niggles, like for example, they could have signed the crown, or that bracelet having that really annoying pin and collar system that I'm always gonna complain about. But more importantly, you've got the fit. You do not have half links here, and the clasp is really quite small, and it only gives you 2 levels of micro adjustment. So I was lucky enough to find a good fit, but that will not automatically be the case for you. And then the biggest niggle, it is the fact that this is a JDM product, and the annoying fact that cities and many Japanese companies only keep these best watches to themselves. I really wish that they would start appreciating the rest of the world a little bit more, and that they would give us these, that they would really make these bargain beauties more available for us. But what do you think about this watch? Is it something that would interest you? Do you believe that it's rather a spiritual successor of the Sharp 033 or a direct competitor of the newer GADA watches to fight watches like the Erebus and the Saint Martin? Tell me what you think in the comments below. And of course, if this video was useful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In this channel, we love reviewing affordable, great quality watches such as this one. I'm gonna leave you here with the reviews of the Erebus Ascent and of the Saint Martin SN0144. I'll be seeing you really soon in those reviews. Goodbye.